Well, good morning. So if you're watching this video, you probably bought yourself a CNC machine. Congratulations. I can tell you it takes a little bit of time to learn how to use it. I've spent the last 3 or 4 months doing a really deep dive on how to use a CNC. And so I'm excited to share with you some of the things that I've learned. So if you're ready to get started, I'm Robert, and this is from the Woodshed. Let's get started. I'm going to be using the Vectric software, specifically VCarve Pro. If you're using Aspire, some of the same things will work, or if you're using the desktop version, it'll work as well. All right, so when you first open Vectric, you'll get this welcome screen. And what I'm going to go through today is I'm going to show you how to make a tray. And we're going to use one tool bit. Okay. If I don't cover any information on any of the menus, it's because the default settings are going to work. And that's not the purpose of the video. All right. Again, the simple purpose is just to get you to get your CNC, make a project, and start getting used to using some of the tools. Okay. We are going to use 3 tools from the tool trays in the CAD software, all right, which is included in your Vectric software. And then we're going to use 3 tools in our CAM software, which will help us create the G code and the instructions for all the router bits. So we're going to go pretty quick. Again, if I don't cover anything, or if it looks like I'm just kind of breezing over things, it's because the default settings work, and those will be a little bit more for a later video. All right, so first thing you got to know is kind of what's the dimensions of your material size. And so when you open VCarve, one of the first menus you get is create a new file. So we're going to do that. And immediately it gives you a box on your page, and it kind of defaults to the last thing that you did. So don't worry too much about any of the settings or any of the boxes that come up. You're going to do that right now. So our job size, this is the material that we're going to use. Okay. And so in my case, or in this case, we're going to use a 10.5, so a 10.5 wide. And then let's see, how tall? Well, let's see, let's make this about 9.25. Again, that just depends. You know, if you've got a bigger piece of material, that's fine. Now the thickness, this is pretty important to know. If you don't have one of these calipers, all right, especially a digital caliper, you should invest in one. All right, this one happens to be a Husky. It's a pretty cheap one. I don't remember where I bought it, maybe Harbor Freight. I don't remember. But the reason they're important is because you want to get an accurate measurement of how wide your material is. So you can get that on camera for you. Okay. Now what I like to do is I like to take a measurement on this side, in the middle, and then over on this edge. And I kind of take the average of the 3. Okay. You would think that this might be 3/4 material because it kind of looks like it, but actually it's 0.80. That's kind of my average. All right. So in my box here, I'll put 0.80. Okay. It's important to know this, especially if you're going to be cutting out anything. Okay. We're going to go from the material surface, our Z position, and then we're just going to click OK. I'm sorry, our XY is in the 0 as well. Sorry, that's important to know. And that's indicated by this little red dot here in the middle. And just choose OK. Okay, so now what you have is you have your material size. Okay, and in your material, within your material, you need to create your tray. All right. We know that we want the tray to be, in this case, 10 inches by 9 inches. All right, so here's one of the first tools we're going to learn. We're going to draw a box or a rectangle. You click on it, it gives you more options here. So down at the bottom for size, okay, we want it to be 10 inches wide, and we want it to be 9 inches tall. Okay, and we're going to want the corners of it to be round by like about, I don't know, let's go by an inch. Okay, and choose create. And you can see, you can go ahead and close that. You can see that it created a rectangular box, pretty much the size of the material that you have. So what we need to do is we need to get this in the center of our material. All right, so here's the second tool you're going to learn is how to center your objects. So you click on the object that you want to center, go over here to the transform objects on the right hand side, choose align selected objects, and choose center it to the middle of the material. And you can see that immediately it's put it inside your material. And choose close. Great. So now you've learned two tools. You created a rectangle and you've created it in the center of your material. All right. Now, the third tool that you're going to learn is how to create an offset. Okay. So the offset is simply the inner part of the tray. So we're going to, now we have to create the inside part of our tray. So we're going to select the item that we want to offset. This is the third tool that you're going to learn. Over here on the left-hand side, select our offset. Probably want to offset this between 1 inch and maybe 3/4 of an inch. Let's see what 3/4 looks like. We'll show the offset. Okay. And if you zoom in a little bit, you can see that our box is going to have about 3/4 of an inch from each of the sides. Okay. So just choose close and you're good to go. Okay, so at this point, you've learned how to do a rectangle, you've learned how to center your items, and you've learned how to use the offset tool. That's all we need to do to create this tray. Maybe you want a little bit more narrow tray. Maybe this looks a little too square. Okay, you could highlight both of these, and you could make them a little bit thinner if you want. That's entirely up to you. If you don't like that, just choose undo. It'll be back at the same size. Okay. Now, because I'm recording outside, you can start to see that the sun is coming out over the top of the trees. So we may be getting some shadows. So we need to get this wrapped up. Okay, so that's the end of creating the actual design. Now we're going to go over to choosing the router bits to do this. And as I told you earlier, we're going to use one router bit for this entire project. First of all, let's create a pocket. Okay, and that's going to be the inner part of the tray. So let's select a pocket toolpath over here on our operations. You choose the second one, that's a pocket toolpath, select it. And again, it defaults to whatever you use last, okay? It's not like this already has in here what we need. But for this pocket, we're gonna use a 1/4 inch end mill. And it takes a little while for you to learn which drill bits to use or which router bits to use. And eventually you'll be able to use them interchangeably and you'll be able to use some that are a little bit more efficient and they'll do a better job for you. But for the sake of ease today and get your project started, we're going to use a 1/4 inch down cut. Okay. We're going to start our tray at the very top. So from the 0 position, and our tray is going to go down about 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Actually, maybe let's make that like 1/3 of an inch. So 0.30. Perfect. And like I said, we're going to use a 1/4 inch bit. And this is telling me that it's going to take 2 times around for that to do that, which is fine. Okay, we'll skip the rest here and we'll just simply click calculate. Okay, as soon as you calculate, it's going to go into 3D mode and show you the size of your material and then the size of the instructions you just gave. Okay, I like to give it a reset here and then press the play button, and you can see this is what your tray will begin to look like. Okay, you can use this little button up here on the top to flip up and down, so you can kind of get a 3D of what your tray will look like. All right, so it's kind of a square tray. All right, now we need to cut out our tray. So let's go back to our toolpaths. All right, and in order to cut out anything, okay, any pattern, you're going to want to use a profile toolpath. So let's select that. And here's where it's important to know your material size. We want to start it at the top. Remember, we're cutting this thing out. So we want to start at 0, 0, very top. And remember that I said our material size was 0.80. Okay, so we want this to cut all the way through. All right. If your material is a little bit thicker than that, let's just say 0.81, it'll leave a really thin paper like um, left over, but it's easy to trim that off or sand it off. Okay. But you want to get this as accurate as you possibly can. All right. So we are going to, I guess, first of all, we need to pick what it is we want to cut out. We want to cut out this outside. So in 2D view, make sure you click what you want to cut out and then choose calculate. And you can see here that there are 3 lines that this router is going to go around. Let's reset this. And it's going to go around 3 times and it's going to cut out your project. Okay. Now, if you want to see all of your projects, okay, you can select the toolpaths down here. So you can see the pocket and you can see the profile. All right. And then if you choose play, I'm sorry, if you choose preview all toolpaths, it's going to show you what your project's going to look like. Okay. And that's going to be your tray. Perfect. Okay, we're almost done here. So now that you've created your tray, we need to record the tools or the G code, which is the instructions for the router bits to cut out your project. Okay, this is pretty simple. Okay, over here on the right-hand side of your tool operations, you have a little icon called Save Toolpaths. Okay, but before you do that, I'd like you to go back over here to your menu and choose File and Save As, okay, and save this project. Let's just call this New Square Tray. And select Save. Perfect. Okay, now getting back to our tools. We want to create the G code. So you're going to select the Save Toolpaths icon. Okay. Now you've got some options here of which ones to actually choose. You want to choose them all. Okay. So simply select all the toolpaths here with this one button. Okay. And if you can combine all of your cuts together, then it's best to do that. So I always choose visible toolpaths to multiple files, group when possible. Okay. And this makes a big difference, especially later when you get into intricate projects. Okay. And you can see here that the first pocket you're going to do with a 1/4 inch end mill down cut. And then you're going to cut it out with the same 1/4 inch end mill. Okay. Save the toolpath. So this is where I'm going to save my tools. So I'm going to save the toolpath. And it'll want to call it the very first thing. Just fine. Let's choose save. And what you'll see inside your projects folder, okay, is you'll see that there is a new square tray. That's the name of your file. And then you'll see that there is a pocket 1 and then a 1-2. That means there's 2 different things that this one file is going to do. Okay, and that's okay. We'll refer to that a little bit later. Okay, that's all there is to it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our CNC machine, and then I'm going to show you how we mount our material to the bed. We'll record that piece. Okay, the entire project is going to be actually pretty quick. If we take a look at our preview here in our summary, you can see that cutting out the pocket, that's going to take 18 minutes. Okay, and the profile will take 2 minutes. Okay, so in about 20 minutes, you'll have this project cut out. There's a way to do it a whole lot faster. We'll get into that in another video. But for now, let's leave it at that. You can simply take a ruler and go from corner to corner. Draw yourself a little line. I like to use chalk, especially on this darker wood. And then where your lines intersect, that's the center of your project. All right. And so when I'm setting this up, I'll tape it down here. I'll move my router into the position right into the center, and that will be my XY center. All right. Anytime you're replacing your router bits, make sure that you clean out the collet. I like to take a little soft bristle brush, clean out the grooves inside, and it doesn't hurt to get the threads of your spindle too. All right, and then we'll get that installed. We'll put our bit in, and just want to get right to the top of the collet, just like that. Okay, now that you've got your stock ready, we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount it right here, and I'm going to use just this reference line here and this one going this way, just to put my tape down. Okay, and so this blue tape method seems to work for a lot of people. Pretty simple. Just take a piece about as long as your material. And I like to put it right in front of the line because I'm going to match it on that stock. Okay. Then I like to put one in the middle. And then one on the top. Depending on the size of the project that you have, you may want to put more. This just kind of gives you some idea. When I stick this thing down, it'll look something like that. Okay, so now let's put our tape on the back. Now, if you'll flip your material on over your tape on the bottom, you're able to get a pretty good idea where all the pieces go. You don't need all this excess. Then our last one will go up across the top. Perfect. Okay. I like to bend these up just so they don't stick to All right, the next piece is pretty simple. You're going to get your basic old CA glue. You don't need a whole lot, but you do need some on each of the strips. Some people like to use the activator. I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to, by all means. All right. Just press it down for a couple of seconds. It'll hold it nice and steady. All right, now our next step is simply to get our router over onto the X. Okay, so we've got our machine powered on. We're going to use our pendant, and we're going to get our we want to set our machine as close as we can to the X. I'm going to be careful here. I just like to go down just so I can get a little bit closer look at how close I'm getting to the Y. So that looks like I need to come a little bit closer. All right, that looks like it's centered pretty good. The next thing we need to do is we need to set Z-axis, that's the up and down. So just to give us a little bit of room here, we'll raise that up. We'll be using our Z probe. Okay, so now we've set our X and we've set our Y and we've set our Z. So at this point, it's simply, let's get ready to run the file. We're going to get back over to the computer and we're going to locate the file and then we're going to press run. Now, there are a couple of ways you can run your program on your CNC. I like to use Ready to Control, which is a software that came with my Next Wave CNC machine. Okay, which is really just a small program that helps you run or be able to maneuver your CNC. Okay, or we can do it manually as you saw me do it on the pendant a few seconds ago. Okay, so now we need to find our file. And if you remember from earlier, we're going to select our file, press open, and you can see it loads it into the program. Okay, you can begin to already see inner gray part, which is the pocket, and the outer side, which is the profile. Okay. All right, well, you can see the project's done and did a pretty nice job. You see some lines there, but they're actually pretty smooth. And once we sand that, it'll look pretty good. Now to get your material off, I like to move the Z over, just out of the way. Now you can set that to automatically move to that location, but that's for another video. So to remove your board here, pretty simple. You're just going to go around the edges, and you can see that it's cut most of it out. And I like to use just a wood chisel, just to try to get under and pry a little bit. Sometimes it's a little challenging, but that's okay. Be patient here. You just spent a lot of time creating this project. There we go. You can see all you got to do then is just peel off your tape. Now, in most cases like this, it's possible that it didn't cut all the way through. That's okay. It's just really paper thin. You'll be able to, you can see that just ripped right off. You'll be able to sand that right off or even break it off. You know, if you got a bandsaw or something, just a little quick there. But the rest of it turned out really well. It's nice and flat. It's really pretty tray. So we created a tray that's approximately 9.5 by 8, something like that. Okay, we used 1 bit for the entire process. Now, I will tell you that that took about 19 or 20 minutes to cut this whole area. Okay, there are ways to speed that up depending on the size of your machine. Okay, for the next project, we're going to do a similar kind of tray, different size, but we're going to use a bold bit to be able to cut this pocket into more of a circular fashion, because we've got some nice hard square or rounded edges here, which is fine. Okay, but just for a little different look. Okay. Well, that's it for this video. Hope you found that useful. Quick 20 minutes to create your first CNC project. So stay tuned for the next one. We'll be using a few more toolpaths, a couple of different tools, and we'll just keep increasing your knowledge on how to use your CNC. Until then, I'm Robert, and this is from the Woodshed. We'll see you next time.